across a particular quote where you stated, I will read it from here. You said, oppressed people do not need a Messiah to deliver them from oppression. All they need is themselves, one another, and the will to persevere. So for those people who don't believe in sharing their stories with others for the fear of being judged, yes, we know that these things do happen. So how would you advise them to open up and let their guards down, but at the same time watch out, especially for those people you refer to as the women in margins?
Yes, great question, Ozaima. Public narrative, very important. It is the story that kindles the emotion, that touches the emotion. I think every one of us have a story. We are in such a delusional state, Ozaima. We don't even know what is best for our country anymore. That's because we don't know what's best for us. So this is a big journey, you know. It's just like you must have, you know, Dr. King said, if you're not willing to die for something, you're not worth living. So I ask all of your listeners, what are you guys willing to die for? Not to kill for. What are you willing to die for? Die for a good reason.
Oh, wow. Now, what in your view are the aspects of Islam today that's most in need of revolutionary transformation, and what is the path forward to enact change in Islam and stand up to extremists?
We are very busy building for the hereafter. We are not focusing the herein now. Okay? So Islam has been hijacked. It has been hijacked politically. It has been hijacked for violence. It has been hijacked for terror. What we are following is not the Islam of our Quran, but we are following is Islam of Hadith. Hadiths are man-written stories of what the Prophet did. There's some truth in it. There's not many truths in many of it. So if it is not common sense, I think it is not Islam. Because I am a Muslim myself, and the Prophet clearly said, you know, that we are responsible for the welfare of 70 people in our community. If people in the name of religion come and kill 30 people, I think that is not Islam. So the extremism, so politicians have used the blasphemy law to really divide people. Because the dividing and ruling is very easy. Yeah, I have been to Nigeria 5 times, and I have never seen a community that intertwined, Ozaima. The brother is married to a Muslim, or the sister-in-law is a Christian, the father was a Muslim. It's just like the family is so intertwined, you know. It's not like other countries where Muslims are in a different lane, Christians are in a different lane, Jews are in a different lane. I didn't see that in Nigeria. I saw such a interwoven weaving of faith and the traditions, and everything was interwoven, but something at the bottom is rotting, you know, and that is where religious leaders have to step up. Every Friday for Jummah, who is talking about love? If we are going to talk about a ritual, you know, how to wash your hands or how to sneeze or what to wear, where is that education for that community? Let's talk about love.
Now, in the words of Robert Kennedy, an American politician and lawyer, he once said, "What is objectionable, what is dangerous about extremists is not that they are extreme, but that they are intolerant. The evil is not what they say about their cause, but what they say about their opponents." All right, our next one is from Hillary Diane Rodham Clinton, who is an American politician and diplomat who served as the 67th United States Secretary of State under President Barack Obama from 2009 to 2013. She once said, Extreme thrives amid ignorance and anger, intimidation and cowardice. Okay. And then our last quote is from Soraya Deen, lawyer, community organizer, international activist, interfaith advocate. She once said, oppressed people do not need a messiah to deliver them from oppression. All they need is themselves, one another, and the will to persevere. Okay, great. Absolutely spot on. Now let's see how all of this could relate to what we'll be discussing today. Very warm greetings and welcome to The Conversation. We are reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here, the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabelle Oji. Now, Nigeria's blasphemy laws have been of focus both locally, nationally, and even internationally, following the arrest and detention of Nigerian humanist Mubarak Bala, and you also have the sentencing of death of a Muslim singer, the imprisonment of a 13-year-old boy for blasphemy in Kano State in northern Nigeria, just to mention a few. Now, an anonymous once said, the blasphemy laws make a mockery of the justice system in Nigeria because laws are there to protect individuals and not to protect ideologies, beliefs, and dogmas. Now, my guest on the show today is Soraya M. Deen. She is a lawyer, author, and founder of the Muslim Women Speakers. She is an award-winning international interfaith activist, community organizer, and a motivational speaker. A fierce advocate of human rights, gender equity, redressing religious-based oppression, dominance, and violence, minority rights, and all. Soraya is a member of the International Religious Freedom Roundtable, IRF Roundtable, and co-founder of the Women's Working Group. Soraya teaches communities how to organize for action in order to solve urgent, relevant, and winnable issues. She is an advisory board member of Faith in Action, the USA's largest clergy organizing network that gives people of faith the tools that they need to fight for justice and work towards a more equitable society. Ladies and gentlemen, you get to meet my guest, Soraya Deen, after this time out. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Now we'll go straight to our conversation. Our guest on the show is Soraya Deen. She is a lawyer and an interfaith advocate. It's great to have you on the show today, ma'am.
Thank you, Ozioma. It's my pleasure to be on the show.
Great. All right, now let's kickstart this conversation. Now, I know that you are the founder of Muslim Women Speakers, promoting women speakers, promoting reforms and inspiring change. How's that coming along? Do you have more women who are breaking the stereotypes and damning the naysayers just to make that change?
Absolutely. The movement for women to participate in civic society, the movement for women to participate in religious freedom, the movement for women to challenge extremism is growing far and wide. People are becoming more aware, and we live in an era of social media. We can see really clearly what is happening and what needs to happen. So people are taking action, particularly women are coming to the forefront.
Oh, that's great.
But not also to say much work needs to be done. This work has begun, but we have to build the momentum.
Now, I know that you bring together Muslim women and women of all faiths to have provocative conversations on current issues ranging from terrorism, Zionism, Israel, Palestine, communication, parenting, and conflict resolution. What exactly do you discuss on? Because I've seen some men stop their wives from attending such meetings, and that could actually liberate them with the excuse of they just want to brainwash my wife. So what do you do when you congregate with these women?
That's a great question, and it is also a very broad question. Much of the issues women face are defined culturally, traditionally, and the brand of religion they practice. And you know, Ozaima, you are in Nigeria. What is done in Abuja is not what's done in Northeast Nigeria. So I am from Sri Lanka. What is done in Sri Lanka is not what is done in India. I live in the United States. What is happening here is not what happens in United Arab Emirates. So there are cultural challenges. And what we do is specifically address the context in which these challenges are emerging. And we believe in giving women the tools to address the issues within the context. Because I don't think it will survive for me to come and say, this is what women in Abuja need to do, or for you to think this is what women in the US needs to do. So we talk on many issues. You asked me what. I think one of the greatest challenges for women is dismantling patriarchy. Patriarchal structures are ingrained and they are well established in religions and in politics. So we want to address that. Then we talk about extremism. Who are the people who are creating this extremism and why is extremism thriving? I don't see women in this area. We are silent recipients of this tragedy, our children. So we talk about that. So why did that happen? Dr. King says, nobody can ride my back unless I bend it. So we want to ask women to ask themselves, what role have you played? Could you do better? You have gifts, talents, and abilities. What is the legacy you're leaving for your child, for the next generation? So we talk many issues, but foundational is also to really not just for one woman to talk and for 10 to listen, but how can 10 women listen and 10 women talk and 10 women take action?
All right, so I hear you say something about dismantling patriarchy. Help us to understand, how do you actually do that?
Well, dismantling patriarchy begins with us recognizing that patriarchy is a system in which men say they have more power and they can lay standards of morality and practice, particularly for women. So if you look around in most of the world, in most of these countries, we can see that happening, right? Women are told how to behave, what to think, how to wear. So this is the crisis we are in, because men behave as if, I won't say all men, religious actors particularly behave as if God spoke to them. They are the recipients, and we women are the benefactors. They have to tell us what. So we say, no, I also have a right to speak to my Creator. I have an agency with my Creator. He has spoken to me too. And let me tell you what He has told me. So in what He says is that there's no division between how He created me and how He created you. In all religions, we know that how Adam was created from the rib, So there's this distinction of this is a woman, this is the role she needs to play, and this is a man, this is the role he has to play. Is a construct. It is a construct. It is a construct that benefits patriarchal structures.
All right, so I recall with the recent elections held in Nigeria, a particular state where a woman would have emerged as the winner and governor of that state. But then I recall also having a chat with some religious people who said that it's 98% impossible for a woman to become the head in that particular region. I would not mention names, so it doesn't look as though I'm trying to fill tribalism and religious sentiment. But according to them, they said in that particular region and religion, a man, especially the religious leaders, cannot bow to the idea and leading of a woman, regardless of whether or not she merits the position. And oftentimes we see these things happen, which have, in one way or the other, deterred women from even going into politics or male-dominated professions. So how do we deal, and how would you advise such women who could be watching us at the moment?
Uzaima, to begin with, these stories have been told to us from our infancy, that men are superior, they're better than. So we all grow up believing in that. And if we challenge that, we have a price to pay. So women have to first realize we are not selling ice cream. That is easy. We are challenging a status quo. a status quo that is clearly based on discrimination, a status quo that is clearly based on discounting the role and the magnificence and the power of a woman. All these men fail to realize that they are also born through a woman, of a woman, from a woman. Okay? Even every prophet was born from a woman. So, functional distinctions. I want your audience to remember this word. Functional distinctions of the 7th century are imposed on women with the 7th century Bill of Rights that is imposed on women as a divine decree. And women have complied. So if we are to break that, it's a highly polarized conversation because I have to say, the people who are making those rules, they think they mean well. They want to continue the continuity. And people like us who are agitating for change, we mean well too. We want to change because the world is changing. The only thing that this will not change is change. And I think religions and religious actors are very slow to adapt and understand this phenomenon. They will use technology, but they want the women to ride a camel. They will use technology and they will look to the West for some kind of answer from a woman leader. But if in your community, if a woman speaks up, that is sin. So who are the women who are speaking out? And I wouldn't say, I say women have to organize. We have to come together, 10 women, talk about how this issue is debilitating in our community, you know, and then build power. Power is organize other women to ask questions, not so much to ridicule anybody, but to say, how can we operate at half steam, you know? There's this group of people who are the women who are told, stay home, get married, and cook and clean. And women should gladly be able to do that. That's a gift we have. But it also doesn't mean I cannot raise my voice in the community. I cannot speak for justice, you know. I cannot speak for equality. God has told me also to do that. So we have to find allies in the men first. Who are the men who are supporting this? Because we can't do this without them, and they can't do this without us. So it's a huge process. I'm a community organizer. I talk about organizing women so that our children, the next generation, will inherit a better world. Not one of extreme fundamentalists, not one of violence, you know, not one of fear, but one of God's mercy. That is love for everyone. We can't go to the mosque and preach love, go to the church and preach love, go to the synagogue and preach love on Saturday, Sunday, and Friday, but not embody it in our life. Exactly. What's the purpose of that kind of life, right? We have to walk the talk.
I agree with you. Now, I actually came across a particular quote where you stated, I will read it from here. You said, oppressed people do not need a Messiah to deliver them from oppression. All they need is themselves, one another, and the will to persevere. So for those people who don't believe in sharing their stories with others for the fear of being judged, yes, we know that these things do happen. So how would you advise them to open up and let their guards down, but at the same time, watch out, especially for those people you refer to as the women in margins?
Yes, great question, Ozaima. Public narrative, very important. It is the story that kindles the emotion, that touches the emotion. I think every one of us have a story, a defining moment in which why we are doing what we are doing. Ozaima, why are you a TV broadcaster? What happened that you thought you must take the message of hope to the people who are listening? What happened in your life? That is a very critical story that I want to hear, that your audience need to hear, so that they are all empowered to do something different moving forward. You know, I was practicing law. And then one day my son was bullied in school. He was called a terrorist because he was a Muslim. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I have a greater purpose. What I am doing is practicing law. What I'm called to do is something greater. I'm called to speak to the people, bring more harmonies, peace, and empower women to do this work. So my story begins with that my son's story where he was bullied, and I could have and that morning that afternoon when I picked him up from school, Osama, he was crying. And there are so many children like that, 7-year-old children who are bullied. Today, even grown up women like us are bullied. So,
True.
how do we speak truth to power? So, that is the story. We must never shy off from telling our story, because I can't tell your story, nor can you tell my story. Every story is unique, isn't it? So,
Most definitely.
in when we bring women, imagine, Ozaima, in your home, around the coffee table, there are 10 women. Let's not go for 20, but 10. Do we, if what if every woman's story is shared? That is where we harness the power. What was her challenge in your community? There must be beautiful stories to hear from. Today I was in a meeting this morning. I heard about a woman who started a movement in Jordan where when their children were in 5th grade, they didn't know how to read in a little village in Jordan. So she brought 10 women, and she taught them to read for 6 minutes. Only 6 minutes. So those 10 women went and found another 10 women, and they began to read for 6 minutes. And another group, 8,000 women learned to read for 6 minutes. And they committed to literacy and reading. What do you think happened to that community? The children were watching, right? If my mother is committed to reading, I am going to read. Such is the power of that story, where this friend of mine, she's with me in a class. We are learning at Harvard how to mobilize public leaders. And she was telling, there were so many women who said, oh my God, I can't read. My husband is not going to like it. I don't need to read. But it was the story of women who came one after the other, who were told that were not given an opportunity to read. They were given in marriage at 15. They loved to read, how their future was just crushed. And they didn't want that for their children. So these women committed, and today they are going to other issues. They're addressing child marriage, because now that community is empowered. So we start small. It's like a pizza, Alzheimer. We don't want to eat the whole pizza at once. We will eat a thin slice of the pizza. We'll create a victory. Because finally, the governments and the men and the people must realize we come from a space of love for our community, love for our country. What is best for our country? We are in such a delusional state, Ozaima. We don't even know what is best for our country anymore. That's because we don't know what's best for us. So this is a big journey, It's just like you must have, Dr. King said, if you're not willing to die for something, you're not worth living. So I ask all of your listeners, what are you guys willing to die for? Not to kill for. What are you willing to die for? Die for a good reason.
Oh, wow. Now, what in your view are the aspect of Islam today that's most in need of revolutionary transformation, and what is the path forward to enact change in Islam and stand up to extremists?
We are very busy building for the hereafter. We are not focusing the herein now. Okay, so Islam has been hijacked. It has been hijacked politically. It has been hijacked for violence. It has been hijacked for terror. What we are following is not the Islam of our Quran, but we are following is Islam of Hadith. Hadiths are man-written stories of what the Prophet did. There's some truth in it. There's not many truths in many of it. So if it is not common sense, I think it is not Islam. Because I am a Muslim myself, and the Prophet clearly said, that we are responsible for the welfare of 70 people in our community. If people in the name of religion come and kill 30 people, I think that is not Islam. So the extremism, why is there extremism, you asked? There is extremism because I feel that extremism is taught in some quarters. I feel there's extremism because not enough women are engaged in the religious field to teach a new theology, of compassion and love.
All right, now let's stay on blasphemy and then the laws, blasphemy laws in Nigeria. Most people will argue that the Federal Republic of Nigeria operates two court systems. Both systems can punish blasphemy, as you have the Constitution, which provides a customary system and the system that incorporates the Sharia laws. The customary system prohibits blasphemy by Section 204 of the Nigeria's Criminal Code, which is entitled insult to religion, and the section actually states that any person who does an act which any class of person considers as a public insult on their religion will with the intention that they should consider the act such an insult, and any person who does an unlawful act with the knowledge that any class of persons will consider it such an insult is guilty of misdemeanor and is liable to imprisonment for 2 years. Also, you have the Sharia courts may also treat blasphemy as deserving of several punishments up to and even including execution. But then, on the flip side, Section 38 of the Constitution entitles every Nigerian to freedom of thought, conscience, religion, and then Section 39 gives every Nigerian the right to freedom of expression. So at what point are you supposed to strike that chord? Because, like they say, where your own right stops, another person's right begins.
I think the Constitution of any country is supreme. It was written after great thought, drafted, and it has been enforced. I would say the Constitution is supreme. Everything else has to conform to that. Where I come from in Sri Lanka, also there are personal laws and traditions and customs based. And when that violates the Constitution, we have to choose the Constitution. Blasphemy laws were introduced by the British. It is not in the Quran. As a Muslim, if somebody is enforcing blasphemy laws and saying that is Islam, that is a disservice to my religion. That is a disservice to my prophet. Because during the time of the prophet, people spat on him. His own uncle challenged Islam. There were tribes that didn't embrace Islam. They questioned it. So I feel blasphemy is weaponized. Blasphemy is weaponized to introduce man-made Sharia laws. Those are extreme hudud laws that are not relevant in today's context. We have come a long way to embrace and fight for many freedoms. And the international religious laws like the ICCPR and the Human Rights Declaration is very clear, Zaima. No religion is protected. But what is protected is your right to practice that religion. Okay? So if I say my religion is the best, protected, there's no law. International law does not do that. But if I say I want to pray 5 times a day because my religion says that, that is up to you. The international laws will protect you. You need to pray 5 times. So that's a different question. So let us get really clear on the concept of blasphemy. I think it is shameful that we have to even talk about such an issue. You think my prophet needs somebody to kill somebody to defend Islam and him? That is a joke. You think my religion needs some people to kill somebody, imprison somebody so that my religion is defended? No, Islam can stand alone. It doesn't need anybody to kill somebody to prove Islam is better. No? So that is the case with all religions. Now Jews, for instance, they have come a long way. They don't deal with these issues. Christianity has come a long way. There was the Reformation. People don't deal with these issues. But look at us Muslims. I am a Muslim, so I can talk very freely about what is wrong in my home, in my community, in my neighborhood. So look at us. We have just arrived We are trying to grapple with eclectic freedoms. We are trying to put everything into a way to, in a way to politicize it. You can't politicize a religion, because you're really, if you politicize, I don't know, I assume you are a Christian. The salvation theory is unique to your faith. And if we cannot impose religion on people. And it is fundamentally wrong. If people think they can defend Islam, they are offending Islam. And we know the background of these blasphemy laws, Ozaima. The British used it to control the people. And if we don't look at our country and love our country enough to unite our people and still resort to those old laws, we are not patriotic. We don't love our country, nor do we love our faith. So my call is, these blasphemy laws were introduced by another era in a different time to subjugate people. And these laws were used and adapted and continue to be adapted by corrupt governments so that they can subdue their people and give the people a bait, hey, go fight on this so that we can do more corrupt activities. We can take your money and we can invest it in a foreign country. Please, people, please work in your community. If a person in your community is being harassed, see why that person is being harassed. Teach them the true Islam. Don't kill that person or imprison that person.
Also, I recall that on 10th of August 2020, a Kano State Sharia court sentenced 2 people for the offense of blasphemy against the Prophet, who was accused. Those people were accused of having blasphemed in a particular song, which the accused person circulated on WhatsApp in March 2020. And even though his lawyer appealed, saying that this sentence, or his sentence rather, violated the African Charter of the rights and welfare of a child and the Nigerian Constitution, one of the sections I read out earlier. So are we having this difference because there are multiple policies and laws that one way or the other opposes each other? And secondly, I'm going to ask you 2 questions and I'd like you to unbundle them in one breath. That's one on the side. And then secondly, how did the great prophet handle these cases in his time? Is it possible we learn in totality from the great prophet?
Good question. So I don't know, I come from South Asia. We had a ruler called, what was his name? They were the president of India for a while. He was a Muslim president. He said, every morning when a ruler of a country wakes up, he has 3 choices. One is he must speak words that will unite his people. And I don't know whether in Nigeria your leaders are doing that. If they are not doing that, they have to do that. But I don't know whether they will be willing to do that because a lot of things, politics depend on votes. So they are scared to offend. That's why we say we need more women in public leadership, women to run for office and hold office. Because I think if you look around the world, women are doing a greater job of uniting their community, And the second duty of a leader is to give that nation hope. Give that nation hope and speak words of hope so that people can rally around a new possibility. Because what we are seeing not only in Nigeria, in all parts of the world, we have certain leaders who have specific agendas, and which is not doing great disservice to their own countries. And third is to do one act of charity. He calls on the people to do one act of charity. And imagine how many people will be doing charitable things. When we love, there's no time to hate. There's no love, Ozaima. There's no love. Children are not taught to love. We are taught to hate, and it is such a burden. It is such a burden. It is killing the psyche of a generation. And when that is dead, their energy is so polluted. Love can't thrive. Even in your faith, it said, isn't it, that you can't release, God can't take away the burden until you release it. The people must come and release that hatred so that God can shower us with more love. Yeah. So politicians have used the blasphemy law to really divide people, because the dividing and ruling is very easy. Yeah, I have been to Nigeria 5 times, and I have never seen a community that intertwined, Ozaima. The brother is married to a Muslim, or the sister-in-law is a Christian, the father was a Muslim. It's just like the family is so intertwined. It's not like other countries where Muslims are in a different lane, Christians are different lane, Jews are in a different lane. I didn't see that in Nigeria. I saw such a interwoven weaving of faiths, and the traditions, and everything was interwoven. But something at the bottom is rotting, and that is where and religious leaders have to step up. Every Friday for Jummah, who is talking about love? If we are going to talk about a ritual, how to wash your hands, or how to sneeze, or what to wear, where is that education for that community? Let's talk about love. Let's talk about something. Let's talk about hunger that's ripe in your community. Let's talk about poverty. Let's talk about youth, and bring Prophet's message to that. So we need a contextual theology, we say. Context is very important. So if the Prophet was able to, in that context, he was able to marry a woman who was 25 years his senior, and he worked for him. Imagine the state of women who were empowered then. What is happening today? Today we see a very different story, where women are told they are not good enough, they are not smart enough, they can't do that. So as the Prophet would say, the first thing I would say to do, what the Prophet did, is empower your women. Give them leadership and scholarship roles in your mosque, so that when youth come to the mosque, they see women respected, honored, and celebrated. Do what the Prophet did. The community will clear, the homes will get better. That's a good beginning.
I quite agree with you. Now, there's so much to unbundle from this conversation with Soraya Deen. I will definitely get right to it after this time out. Let's go on a quick break, and we'll be back. Join us again. Why so much interest in Nigeria? Why not Al-Qaeda? Why and some other Islamic states like Afghanistan, Pakistan? Does this mean that political Islam or extremisms are no longer a threat in these countries to warrant the attention?
Oh, why Nigeria? It is a very powerful state. It has incredible resources, and it is hope. Tell me, I think your population is about 525 languages spoken in your country. The diversity, the beauty of and the resources you have, and it's not the country and the constitution. Just read your constitution. It's powerful. It's just that a tribal mentality has taken over, a political power mongering has taken over, a gender discrimination policy has taken over, a religious division policy has taken over. So there's hope. We can overcome.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We're reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you've actually missed out on a whole lot, but then you can still join in the conversation. As our guest on the show today is Soraya Deen. She is a lawyer. She's an interfaith advocate. She's a human rights activist. It's great to have you on the show again, ma'am.
Thank you. So glad to be back.
All right. So now, as we were talking about blasphemy laws, so what are the impact of these blasphemy laws, especially on ordinary citizens of a country? Because like they say in law, ignorance is not an excuse.
Oh, so we know in the United States, I sit on every Tuesday, I sit with the International Religious Freedom Roundtable. And we have activists from all over the world who share with us challenges they have with religious freedom. And we at in the United States believe religious freedom is foundational to all kinds of conflict in every part of the world. So we want to promote religious freedom. And the stories we hear from Nigeria is not so good, because we hear of lots of killings and persecutions. So we have to change that image, because that is not what I saw in Nigeria in my visits. I saw powerful, loving, kind, generous people talking to one another. But there is a fraction of some people who are causing this. So the more we are quiet about it, because we are afraid, and I understand that too, because you can get killed for raising these issues, you know. So the more we are quiet, the more emboldened they become. So we have to build grassroots movements and talk about, advance God's mercy, because this is a highly polarized topic. Because just as much those people who are engaged in blaming, shaming, and accusing and imprisoning people, they love their prophet. That doesn't mean that we don't love our prophet, but we are advancing that love in a humanitarian way, in a humanistic way. So let's say, for instance, somebody said something negative or questioned. People don't say negative things. Even for merely questioning religion and theocracy, people go to jail in Nigeria. I know that. You know, in Pakistan, a fellow Sri Lankan was lynched in broad daylight because he removed some posters in Arabic. And Asia Bibi, because she refused to drink from a Muslim woman's cup, they said it was blasphemy. So if every little reason, the clause you read, Osama, is very broad, you know. It gives people so much of freedom to misconstrue what is blasphemy, you know. So this is not a joke. This is serious stuff. People's lives are depending on these accusations. When one man goes to prison for 7 years, his family is destitute, his children, his life. And we, as a fellow human being, we have to be responsible to uplift one another. No? So these blasphemy laws that are, Nigerians have to have a heightened state of awareness. What is this law doing to my country? What is this law doing to my people? You know, what does God want from me? Is he telling Rahma, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim? Every surah of our Quran begins with that, you know, with Rahim, with compassion and mercy and patience. Where's the patience? Let's say in one of your neighbors, you thought he did something, said something, you know. Befriend the person and tell him, teach him something new. Be that Muslim that the Christian will be jealous of, not because of your wealth, but because of your humanity. So explain a concept to somebody, bring people in, love. If you're talking about God's love, and if we are begging for God's love, despite all the sin and the offenses we commit, be that God that you can shower that love, you know. Now, I can be charged for blasphemy in your country even for that statement. It's a figurative in the context, you know. I'm not aspiring to be God, but I'm aspiring to be God-like. Godliness is a choice. The difference between good and God is the letter O. So in everything you do to embody God, put the letter O and take action.
All right, then. So I saw a report, because you talked about how you sit on the religious roundtable. I saw a report saying that Nigeria had previously been designated as a country of particular concern in 2020 and a special watch list country in 2019. But then the Secretary of State determined that Nigeria did not meet the criteria to be designated as a country of particular concern for engaging in or tolerating particular severe violations of religious freedom, or as a special watch list country for engaging in or tolerating severe violations of religious freedom under the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998, which when such designations were announced in, I think, November 2021. Now, in its 2022 annual report, the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, that's USCIRF, recommended that the U.S. State Department designate Nigeria as a country of particular concern for engaging in and tolerating systematic, ongoing, and egregious religious freedom violations. Also recently, the European Parliament slammed the Nigerian government on its failure to address these human rights violations. So my question here is, with all the slammings and reverting, should that make the country worry, especially for its international image, since you're sitting on the religious roundtable?
Absolutely. I think you have a new president. We are hoping, I'm hearing fabulous things about him. He's very liberal, he's tolerant, and he listens. So we have to put this agenda in front of him before it's his third year comes, then he's struggling for votes. Then he has to listen to others. So we have to lay the foundation for a powerful shift, because in the international world is watching, and then why depend on international world's testimonial for what is right, Ozaima? All countries are motivated by what is in their best interest, and United States is no exception. We at the International Religious Freedom Roundtable, we are sadly disappointed that the Secretary of State, Mr. Blinken, has taken away that designation. The State Department. It should never have been removed, because it is evidence-based what has been reported, but we will not continue. We will not give up the fight. But listen, I sit at these tables and I see the advocacy paradigm. There's advocacy. People come to DC to change things, but there's only so much DC, and there's only so much the State Department. There's only so much USA can do. Until the people on the ground, they take responsibility as well. This is very critical for change to happen. And let me remind you why, Ozaima. I don't know if you have heard of the Montgomery bus boycott. During the civil rights movement, that was a defining moment. Blacks were told they couldn't ride the bus, but they got an opportunity to ride. Then they were told they couldn't sit in the bus. Then they got an opportunity to sit. Then they were told they couldn't sit in the front of the bus. And then they had to sit in the back. But the blacks were riding the bus every day, and they saw that the front seats were vacant. And nobody was sitting, but the blacks were jam-packed in the back standing. And one day, a woman by the name of Rosa Parks, now she didn't do it alone, it was a highly planned, orchestrated event. She had the courage to sit in the front of the seat. And for that, she went to prison. And there, what happened was, just because she went to prison and a case was won, the things didn't change. That's what Nigerians are waiting also for, I think, like so many other countries. They want one law to change things or one person to change. No. But what happened in Montgomery, I say this today because it was true then in 1956. It has to be true in 2023. The people, they organized. They didn't have power. They didn't have resources. But they had just one thing. And that is what is very important for us to remember here. What do you think was that they had one thing that they had power with? That was their feet. They walked for 1 year. I don't know whether we have such resilient people in Nigeria anymore, but there are. We need to organize them. These people, Ozaima, walked to work for 1 year, and then while they were walking, they were using taxis. And what did the government say? If you give a ride to a black person in a taxi, you're going to be fined for something. The taxis didn't give them a ride. Then what did they do? The blacks got together and they started to give their own cars. And they just imagine, go back then and think, it was not a cakewalk. Think how many people said we can't do this and give up. Think how many people fought for this. Think how many people lay awake for this. Think how many people gave their life for this. So this didn't happen just like that. So what did they have? The Montgomery bus boycott. I want all your listeners to read this Read the Montgomery bus boycott. The only thing of power they had was their feet. Don't Nigerians have a vote to elect the right person? We have to educate the people. Elect their leaders who are tolerant of other religions, who are respectful and who promote religious freedom. That should be a first question on your ballot. Okay? So there are so many ways in which people can mobilize. But let's get people who have the common values to come to the table. The religious freedom should be a value of your people. Not everybody will, but get the people, then we'll work. That is the way we mobilize the community. So what did these people have? They had only their feet, they marched for 1 year, and they brought in the anti-segregation laws. Therefore, the buses were desegregated. And then people began to ride the buses. It was a hard-fought victory, but we have several victories like that. If you look at the farm workers' march to boycott, and to strike for better wages, then if you look at the work of Lema Gabowi in your part of the world, in Liberia, how she mobilized women. She didn't have anything. Her child was crying for a donut, and she didn't know, she was helpless. So read her story. We have to read Ozaima. We have to educate ourselves. It is the lack of education that we become so poor and weak. We are waiting for a handout. We are waiting for an idea. Why can't we read? Why can't we understand? And why can't we elect better leaders? Not only in your country, in everywhere. Because what we do, even in Sri Lanka, we are in a severe crisis. The vote was a Valentine vote. People voted parties. Oh, he's the party, here's the vote. Corruption took effect so deep. Today, my people in Sri Lanka, they are in so much in debt. For generations, we won't get over this debt. That's another story. But the point I want to make is people have to step up. They have to value their patriotism is not just a claim. It should connect their head and their heart and their hands so that they take action.
Absolutely spot on. But then, so why so much interest in Nigeria? Why not Al-Qaeda? Why and some other Islamic states like Afghanistan, Pakistan? Does this mean that political Islam or extremisms are no longer a threat in these countries to warrant the attention?
Oh, why Nigeria? It is a very powerful state. It has incredible resources, and it is hope. Tell me, I think your population is about 525 languages spoken in your country, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Am I right?
Yes, over 200 million people.
What is the population? I don't know. I might have to ask you that.
We are over 200 million people, even though we'll be having census anytime soon.
Huh?
We're over 200 million people, even though we'll be having census
230 million people. So the diversity, the beauty of and the resources you have, and it's not the country and the constitution. Just read your constitution. It's powerful. It's just that a tribal mentality has taken over, a political power mongering has taken over, a gender discrimination policy has taken over, a religious division policy has taken over. So there's hope. We can overcome.
How can we, as not only Nigerians, but also as Africans in general, both Muslims and Christians or atheists, how can we end this polarization stance on blasphemy and build solidarity to advance God's promise of love and mercy for mankind, and at the same time strengthen the cause that further divides us as humans? Because we are humans first.
Yes, I think one of the pillars that is not speaking up and stepping up is your clergy. More probably, I will speak to my Muslim community. Really, during the time of the Prophet, the mosques were like community centers. That's where their people came, they debated, they spoke, they had ideas. Jews and Muslims and Christians worked together. I think we have to see that from our mosques, to preach a new theology. A feminine theology is critical in that, that teach the real message of mercy, um, and to really call out these incidents of blasphemy. We have to call it out that it's wrong. Who is standing up for these people who are being blasphemed? Where are the Muslim communities in those communities? They are afraid. I know that. They're afraid they will be killed. So many things have gone beyond measure. Uh, I see it's going to take a valiant effort and a powerful leader and an engaged citizenry. They have all come together, and a judiciary that is impartial. I think you have a powerful judiciary. We hear a lot about the impartiality of the judiciary. And we need to, the corruption, I mean, it spreads its tentacle to everything. People are not getting their resources. And when I was in Nigeria, I used to drive a lot. You know, one day we came we landed in Abuja and we drove to northeast Nigeria, to Gombe. On the streets, I was surprised to see youth. They're doing nothing. They're just standing and wasting so much of their gifts, talents, and abilities. I think a lot of the resources need to come back to the communities where we really build the infrastructure and structure, build people's minds and more education. And I think corruption has to go too. And I don't know how that's going to happen. But here's what I assert. If people come together, let's say there is a village of 100 people. If people come together, they have a conversation, and this is their vision for their village. If anybody falls short of that, we are not going to tolerate. And that vision should be one of love, compassion, and community and solidarity. And people need to take charge of their community, not wait for the central government to do everything. That's a beginning. And we know we can't predict everything, but when good happens, more good happens. So it's hope. We have to live in hope, and we have to do the work. Because hope is not a strategy. I'm not telling just hope. Hope is not a strategy. We have to do the work.
All right. So looking back at all the years of your activism on Muslim reform, women liberation, gender equality, human rights, and interfaith activism, and all, do you see any progress yet?
Yes and no. Because when we take one step, we are taking 3 steps back, you know. But with social media, much is possible. But let's talk about Muslim reform and then women. I think in countries like Tunisia, they have special schools for women imams. That's promising. They're leading mosques. I don't think Nigeria is anywhere there. Yes. So what is wrong for a woman to preach and teach? Whoever said it is only the domain of the men? You know, we know that Khadija was a businesswoman who employed the Prophet. We know Aisha radiallahu anhu, she went to war alongside Prophet. She fought with him in some of those battles, and she traveled with him. And later she interpreted much of some of the Quranic verses and what it meant and what the Prophet did. And if we have women who are inventors and creators and builders, what is this that we are saying? You know, don't be a leader in the religious community. I think that shift has to happen. And that is happening in some countries. Even in countries like the United States, we have women-led mosques, women imams. So we have to do that. That is a beginning. And then in terms of poverty and other issues that are crippling our community, I think we have to have communal responsibility where I don't sit at my table, have 10 dishes when my neighbor has nothing to eat or has one dish, you know. We have to encourage sharing and participation. And above all, a country like Nigeria that is battered by extremism, your president has to speak hope to the people. He has a mantle that was given to him. He has to unite the people. And then at the same time as he does that, people have to also wake up and play their role, be productive. So it goes hand in hand.
All right. So now let's get your last word to our viewers who are listening or watching you at the moment. What are your last words to them, especially
I can't
women?
hear.
And let's get your last word to our viewers or our listeners who are watching you at the moment. What are your last words to them, both the men, the women, old and young?
Oh, okay. Okay. I want to end by saying this. Once social change begins, it cannot be reversed. You cannot uneducate the person who has learned to read. You cannot humiliate the person who feels pride. You cannot oppress the people who are not afraid anymore. That's not my quote, that's a quote from Cesar Chavez, one of the leaders of the Farm Workers Union. So what we are trying to say is for people to take responsibility and remember, every one of us, we are endowed with deep gifts, talents, and abilities. Search yourself, search within, and see when you do your namaz 5 times a day, ask yourself, God, how can I serve you? How can I serve my community? Serving my community is serving you. That's what God wants us to do. So take personal responsibility. I say personal responsibility so that people will say, oh my gosh, because Zaima walked this earth, this is what happened.
Great. Thank you so much. What a
Thank
fine way
you.
to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Soraya Deen. It's been a wonderful pleasure having this discussion with you.
Thank you very much for the space. And you are a fabulous listener. You just let me speak so much and you brought out the best questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate
Yes.
it.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right, viewers, that's where we end this conversation. We have been chatting with Soraya Deen. She is an activist. She's an international human rights lawyer. She is an interfaith advocate and plenty things plus more. It's been a wonderful time here on The Conversation. I'm sure you must have been rightly educated, entertained, and informed. Be reminded that this program and this segment of the show is only to educate and inform people and not to insult anyone's honesty and not to insult anyone's intelligence or anything like that. It's nothing of such. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time. From the nation's capital, Abuja, I am Annabelle Oji. God bless you and yours, and God bless Nigeria.